in 1945. So let's try to imagine something 5 billion times worse than that, all concentrated in a single instant, and at a single point on the Yucatan Peninsula. That was Chicxulub. The impact produced a huge cloud of dust and ash which enshrouded the planet and changed the global climate for centuries to come. The result was the extinction of around 75% of all plant and animal species then living on Earth. Chicxulub's most famous victims were the dinosaurs, those giant vertebrates that had dominated the biosphere for 150 million years. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened. The dinosaurs themselves came to prominence in the wake of an earlier mass extinction, and there were at least 3 others prior to that. They weren't all necessarily caused by impact events. There are other possible causes, but it's likely that at least some of them were. If a 10-kilometer object can cause so much devastation, what about a 1-kilometer one, or even 100 meters? That's not going to wipe out whole species, but it could still be enormously destructive. The object that created Arizona's meteor crater was only about 50 meters in size. It doesn't need much imagination to visualize what would happen if a similar object hit a densely populated city today. An object of similar size, probably slightly larger, entered the atmosphere over Russia in 1908. This one exploded at high altitude, so there wasn't any crater, but the resulting fireball scorched a huge area of forest, and the blast flattened millions of trees for a radius of 30 kilometers. By a stroke of luck, this happened over the sparsely populated Tunguska River Valley, so there were virtually no casualties. If the same thing had happened over Moscow, 3,600 kilometers to the west, it would have been a different story. In earlier times, before the notion of cosmic impacts was fully understood, an event like Tunguska would probably have been misrecorded as some other type of natural disaster, such as an earthquake. Did people notice any correlation between such events and things seen in the sky? There has always been a strong association between comets and impending disaster, though more likely this was out of pure superstition. In many cultures, a comet was once the archetypal bad omen. To give just one famous example, a bright comet appeared in the year 1066, shortly before the Norman invasion of England. One of the scenes in the Bayeux tapestry, created by the Normans after their victory, depicts the English King Harold being warned about it. His fate was sealed. The comet was taken as a certain portent of defeat, conveniently ignoring the fact that the Normans would have seen the comet too. In hindsight, we now know that the comet of 1066 was Halley's Comet, the largest and most spectacular of the regularly appearing short-period comets. Its orbit brings it back to the inner solar system time and again, roughly every 76 years. It has been seen since antiquity, but the fact that each appearance was the same object was only worked out after Isaac Newton developed his theory of gravity in the 17th century. Among other things, this explains how objects in the solar system all move on regular orbits. Newton was a professor of mathematics at Cambridge University, but it was a professor at Cambridge's great rival, Oxford, who first demonstrated the tremendous predictive power of Newton's theory. This was Edmund Halley, from whom the famous comet takes its name. After observing a comet in 1682 and calculating its orbit, he realized that it was exactly the same comet that had been recorded on at least 2 previous occasions, in 1531 and 1607. He extrapolated the orbit forwards to work out that the comet would appear again in 1758, which it duly did, 17 years after Halley's death. This new understanding hardly made cometary paranoia go away. It just changed its nature. To quote Carl Sagan and Anne Druyan, the brand of mischief that comets are said to bring, flood, darkness, fire, rending the earth asunder, changes with time and astronomical fashion. But the association of comets with catastrophe remains curiously steady through the generations. Even Halley wasn't immune. In 1694, he presented a paper to the Royal Society called Some Considerations about the Cause of the Universal Deluge.